I'm Beverly Billaris, and I'm a teacher. I just retired from being a teacher, but I think I want to tell you why I was a teacher. I have a very diverse background. I worked the corporate world many years ago, and I have no children. I am married, and I made very good money in the corporate world. And one day I took stock of myself of, where am I going? If I leave this earth today, who have I touched, if anybody? And so I went home, and I had just gotten married, and I told my husband that I'm quitting and going back to school, and I'm going to go teach because I want to touch lives and make a difference. So I did, and that was 20 years ago. Teaching was different. Teachers were never in it for the money. Nobody is. You can't be a teacher and be in it for the money. But you had a love of teaching and a passion, and kids had a passion to learn. And when you went into the classroom, you knew from August till June, this is the curriculum that you had to teach. And this was my world. These are my kids, my world. And how I had got there didn't make any difference as long as these kids performed and you turned them on and they loved the class and they did well and they excelled. I did that for about 10 years, and then FCAT came out. And when the FCAT came out, I was like, oh, now we can't, because I used to take my kids on 9 field trips a school year where they went to museums and Coast Guard things and saw your government in place, and you exposed, because I taught it's a Title I school, and these kids don't get to see this ever. And it's all about keeping them engaged. FCAT came out, that went away. Can't do it because we got to practice for a test. And unfortunately, I had some personal issues at home. My mother got lung cancer, and my husband had a stroke, all at the same time. So I left for a year. And in that year that I took off, I was asked to run for city government. And never in my wildest dreams would I think I was going to be in politics. So I thought it over, and I said, well, I'm not liking the direction where the education is going, and maybe it's time to step back. And I chose to run for City Hall, and I was a commissioner, vice mayor, and then mayor. And hopefully I made a very good difference in the city of Tarpon Springs. I'm not somebody I'm not a pushover, and I'm very passionate about something that I believe in. I finished my term with the city of Tarpon Springs, and for the last couple of years, it was the last year I was in office, they had asked the school, the principal was over and visiting me as mayor, and they needed a teacher to teach administer the FCAT for a teacher that was going out on pregnancy leave, long-term sub. And I was still mayor, and I said, this is my last year. I'm coming off all my committees. I could do this. And I went back into the classroom, and then I decided to go back full-time. And I was shocked, to say the least. I'd been gone for 12 years, and we went backwards. And so I said, okay, and I went into the classroom, and this year we came out with, that it was practice to the test. And I still tried to engage and encourage my students as much as I could, but I had, as a teacher, huge limitations of what I could actually do. And then the Common Core came out, and I think that was the camel that broke the straw. And what I teach 5th grade. I shouldn't say teach, because I'm retired now. 5th grade, I teach my kids the Constitution. I teach my kids about the legislative government. I teach social studies. Common Core, I get to do that in 5 minutes a day. 5 minutes. We're held accountable for how our children, and I have no problem with accountability. But the problem is with the accountability that we are forced to have is we're literally given a script, and this is how you're going to teach, this is when you're going to teach, and then when the outcome at the end of the year is not to their standards, it's the teacher's fault. Well, I'm sorry. I was following your script. So the accountability should not be mine. It should be yours. So I decided this year to resign, or not resign actually, I'm old enough to retire, so I decided to retire and get back into the political end of it, because I think I can have a voice in Tallahassee. I have no problems going to Rick Scott and telling him, buddy, this isn't working. No child left behind, we're leaving them all at the gate. Every last one of them. I'm promoting students and they're not ready. We've got kids in high school that don't know mathematics, can't read a complete, can't write a sentence, let alone read one. And then they get out in our system, and then what do we have? And none of them know anything about, with the new system, they're not going to know anything about your Constitution and your government. And then before the Common Core came out, my students in 5th grade could tell you about our legislative body. They could also tell you about Hitler. They went through the World War, and I had a student that hated to read, and then we talked about Pearl Harbor. And he couldn't stop getting his hands on books about Pearl Harbor. The kid was, I mean, I got him. But he was learning history. Our history that our children are going to lose in this new system. And it's sad. I do have a strong business background. I've been in business for forever. I worked in the corporate world. I've owned my own businesses, which I've kind of slimmed down at this point. Now I mostly own properties and rentals. But I've had leasing companies, import-export companies, a tour company, receptive tour company. I'm a published author, co-author. I'm working on my next book, although I think the St. Pete Times said it was a romance novel. It's not the last one I wrote it's not a romance novel. It was historical fiction. But God bless the St. Pete Times. And
said.
Yeah, you know. But I think I have a lot to bring to the table to the school board, seeing the fact that I believe I'm the only candidate or anyone that's on the school board that has actually been in the classroom in the last 20 years. Yes, others have business backgrounds, so do I. I'm also used to budgets, streamlining a budget, being a mayor. I'm used to dealing with unions and standing up for what's right for the employee as well as management, finding fair ground. I've made, being a mayor, you have to make some really tough choices. And I'm used to being on the wrong side of those, not on the wrong side, to me the right side, but standing up for the right reasons in anything that comes before me. I'm not shy standing up and fighting for what's right. So, and I have a history of that with city government. So I think that pretty much covers me.
Good. Nice, thank you. Okay.
Okay, here comes the
Here
tough
we go.
part.
No, it's not gonna be tough. You'll be fine.
Okay.
What are the pros and cons of pursuing federal money for local education?
Right now, I think the county gets, I want to say it's 34% of their dollars are federal funds. I have a strong problem with federal government telling local schools how to run your school. It's not a one-size-fits-all, and they've lost giving teachers and schools, administrators, autonomy of their schools. Not all schools are equal, not all children are equal, and we have to have giving back the power to the teachers and to the individual schools. When you have federal government, it's a cookie-cutter system, which actually that's why we're looking at what we're looking at today with the Common Core. It's a cookie-cutter system. I will tell you, the school year, you have to show a flow chart of where you are during the day, which was hysterical to me. Because at 9:45, everybody's teaching reading at 9:45. And at 11:45, or whatever the time is, you're all teaching math. And you're all on page 173. That doesn't mean if the child gets it or not. Because tomorrow you're on 374, whether your children understand it or not. This year, because of the Common Core, we were implemented in doing this. In our school, we have 4 fifth-grade teachers. So we team teach. So there's no individuality to the teaching. We're all doing the same thing at the same time. Unfortunately, I broke that rule all year because I knew I was retiring. So, what happens is that Johnny doesn't get it, and with federal funds, Johnny doesn't get. You don't get to stay there and work with Johnny. So, you have to move on, which is sad. That's why we're getting children that can't add. I had 5th graders that couldn't add and they couldn't multiply, but my first month of school I had to teach division. How can you do division if you don't know your multiplication? Yeah. So I think we need to have a whole lot less of federal government in our schools. And unfunded mandates.
How would you explain zero tolerance? Is it a good policy?
I think there's a place for zero tolerance, and it's a very small place. I answered somebody's questionnaire on this last week. I don't believe in zero tolerance where if a 5th grader makes a gun out of their finger, it's zero tolerance and you get suspended and you're now out of school and your career is ruined. There's been students that I know in high school that have done something stupid that anybody at this table, looking at pretty much everybody's age around the room, that you did a prank at school and it was your hormones in act, and you're being stupid because that's what you do when you're that age. And in today's world, you're pulled out of school and you lose. I saw a student lose his scholarships for zero tolerance over literally nothing. Zero tolerance should only be zero tolerance if someone comes in with an actual gun and goes to harm someone else. I love the zero tolerance. I was attacked last year by a 5th grade student which weighed 186 pounds and about an inch taller than me, and I had my arm in a brace. And so it doesn't really work because this child was supposed to get 3 days suspension, and I was supposed to be satisfied with that because I'm the teacher. And for me, that was zero tolerance, when you cause harm to someone else, and my life was threatened, and so I find that it's the way it's written now. No, I don't support it. It needs to change. There has to be rules, of course. Guns, threat of life, rape, serious stuff. Yes. Some of the stuff that they're doing now, no, I don't support it.
Would you support school uniforms in public schools?
I just left a school. Our school is a uniform school. There's pros and cons about that. The pros, the cons of a uniform would be, and we've heard it from parents, it stops creativity of the child. Pros on it that I've witnessed in the school, especially the school that I taught in, it stops today's child that comes to school. Some of these kids come dressed literally like, excuse the expression, like hookers.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
I see them on the street.
Yeah. There's also children that can't afford, because the school that I taught at, I'm still at the same school I taught at 20 years ago, and it wasn't a uniform school. Some children come in dressed to the nines. They've got, $150 sneakers and a $100 outfit, and they get their hair foiled, and, they're dressed, and nicely dressed. And then you have children that can't put two things together to come in with a clean shirt. It helps in that area, making everybody sort of equal, so that there isn't the teasing and the humiliation of another child that's not as fortunate as somebody else who can have a wardrobe. But I think the biggest thing is the inappropriate dress. The bottoms with your butts hanging out,
Mhm.
Those type of things. So if I weighed one against the other and been through both at the same school, I found that the uniform school does work better. Kids do concentrate more on studies than, believe it or not, girls are very, very developed in 5th grade. Instead of looking at girls' boobs and inappropriate dress, yes. So it worked well in our school. So I wouldn't have a problem supporting it. Might take some heat over it, but you should see what I see, you know.
Oh, no.
Yeah, in the school system. When I was mayor, I visited the other schools. And, it's in the city, I stayed active within the school system even though I was mayor, and I would visit the different schools, and I would go in middle schools and high school. And what I saw, yeah, it would be better. Yeah.
I taught high school, so
Yeah.
I'm relating to what you're saying.
It's really bad. You know, we're not the same social status
That's right.
anymore with kids. I mean, no, what I did when I was in 5th grade is, you know, where these kids today, they know more than I do today. You know, it's like,
What's your opinion of the increasing reliance on computers for testing and learning?
well, I'm trying to figure out how the county's gonna do this, because in many of the rural area schools, they don't have the computers. I have a whole issue on the testing to begin with. A lot of children do not test well on a computer. I witnessed this with my own students this year, because most of the tests we did, the reading, the science, and the math on computers this year. Although the county did come out with some disadvantaged students got to take computers home, but heavens to be, that was like 3/4 of the year was over. Their plan is that, from what my understanding is that from an early age, everybody gets a computer, and over the years, they'll get used to taking tests on computers. And unfortunately, I think we're gonna head totally to that way, but, I don't do well. I'm an adult, and I've taken LSATs and all kinds of exams on computers, and it's difficult for me. Children that have learning disabilities can't test on computers. So they're gonna have to really think this. You have to
Kids
be.
with learning disabilities, so.
Yeah, they don't do well, and most of my children in my classroom had many issues. So, and they can't focus at all that moving on the screen. Some kids, you know, I have kids that are geeks, they're really into it. Yeah, there is a percentage that do well on computers, but there's more that don't. So, I understand I would assume that it would be cheaper to run the test if everybody's on a computer, because it's not paper and pencil, getting rid of the paper kind of thing, but,
Oh, that's silly.
no. We will go there, but it's definitely a problem.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
What would be your top priority as a member of the school board?
A few things. I'd like to look at the transportation issue with the school buses. Definitely look at the upper end of the administration salaries. Salaries, I believe, are like 85% of the budget. I would rather see some cross-training at the upper levels. Speaking as a teacher, that they have all these jobs where, you know, they come in and they do trainings, and they're teachers, and all these coaches, and some of it's good, but there's a lot of stuff that's wasted. When I was mayor, the one thing I did is I went into the budget and looked at ways we can streamline that budget, but not affect the student. You have to do it a way where it doesn't impact the child. But I think there's waste at the top level, and I wanna really go into that budget. I haven't gotten a copy of it yet. I'm setting up an appointment with the finance director at the school board and seeing, you know, I have some information on the budget, but I haven't really gotten into it. The biggest priority, I think, is making sure that our students all have an equal chance for success, to succeed. You know, the consumer in this whole scenario is the parents, and the product is the child. The taxpayers are paying the bill. So it's more about getting the biggest bang for your buck. So having said that, I would like to look at rethinking not the FCAT, the Common Core. It's not good. I only taught it 1 year, but it has some strong failings. I think probably going to Tallahassee, also looking at finding other dollars other than federal funding. I do know that we get, you know, years ago when they came out with a lottery, and they got the teachers union and all the teachers behind it, and it never went totally to the kids. It never was what it was supposed to be, and it does go for the scholarships. However, a lot of that money is being rerouted somewhere else. We're not getting all that money that we need. So I would go there for some of my dollars that is actually due to us, that people believe this is where the money's going, and it's not all going where it should go. So some of those are some of the top priorities I would be looking into.
Now, the next question you have alluded to, so I'm going to just ask you to expound. And the question is, should Florida institute Common Core no matter what they call it?
No. I've taught it. I will give you an example. Common Core math. Besides, you don't get to teach social studies, which is a whole other avenue that I've already talked about. Let's talk about the math. I think there was something on YouTube, 35 plus 12, and it expounds out to the side how to get to that.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, as teachers, two things went wrong this year. 2 weeks before school started, got a whole new curriculum. Last year, we bought, in the last school year, we had all new math books, set up to the standards for the FCAT. During the summer, they dumped those books and came in with new books for the Common Core. So there's a huge waste of money there. So they have to figure out how to stop knee-jerking and jumping to everything and losing money. But we were being tested on the FCAT. One of the biggest questions I asked about that at a meeting, and I said, okay, you're giving us this new theory of teaching, and that happens over and over in education. Every time you turn around, they're coming out a new way to teach math. And so I said, okay, we'll do this. But I'm teaching Common Core, but in May, they're going to be tested on the FCAT. How's that going to have these students ready? The Common Core is so in-depth and so thorough that they will do better. Well, how I taught my class this year is I sat and took out the book that I was told I had to teach. And by the way, we had 2 weeks to be on page with this. What they needed to do was, with any change, give us this whole year, get proper training for a whole year, test FCAT, and teach FCAT, and kids would have been fine. But they did, so as I taught my lesson, and it really does expound, and I would get lost in this minutia of how to add 35 plus 12. And I would say, okay, kids. And my kids would be sitting there like, huh? And one out of, and give it credit to be like one kid raised his hand and goes, "Oh wow, I got it," because he thought that way, and that's okay. But the majority of other kids were looking at me like I had three horns. So I said, "Okay, close your books." And what I did last year when we had to pack up and send back the FCAT math books, I didn't send mine back. And I said, "Okay, take out the other math book, and I'm going to teach you math." And I taught them that way. I had another 5th grade teacher do it as well, and we had 4 5th grade teachers. 2 were new, and they taught the Common Core to the letter. I'm a professional. I have to teach it. And I would say to my guys, "Okay, I got to teach you this. Just go with it. Don't worry, we'll straighten it out before the day's over." Now, I spent more than one day on a lesson because I taught both ways. And at the end of the school year, we pulled our FCAT scores. Mine and the other teachers' kids had huge growth in math on the FCAT. The other 2 were in the toilet because they weren't ready. And as professionals, when you teach a subject and your kids are sitting there and they're blank, you look for 500 different ways to teach it. And eventually, everybody gets it. And we've been doing that for years. With this mandate that we have about the Common Core, I'm the professional. I have a master's degree. Allow me to teach this any way I need to teach it so that I know that they've got it. And if I don't do it, and accountability's fine. And if I don't get them from A to B by the end of the year, fire me. But don't give me a cookie cutter sheet to teach a subject and my kids just don't get it. We are setting up our kids every day for failure. And especially your Title I kids, the low income kids that I taught. Do you have any idea what these kids feel like? We come in the first week of school and we test them, and a month later we test them again. And oh, you still failed. Oh, you're still failing. They know they're not passing. It's wrong. So, next question.
Well,
I think you already answered that almost.
I'm going to tweak this question because the
Okay.
question starts as, are you aware of the amount of student testing required by Common Core? Obviously, you are aware.
Oh, yes, very much aware.
But are you aware of those who will profit from this testing? I mean, who's profiting from all this testing?
Well, there's a lot of people profiting from all the testing. And I've really never got too much into that kind of thinking, more or less because I've been so mad about everything else. So.
Okay.
But people that are creating these tests are the ones who are making the money. And then it's kind of sad because what they've done is they've created this whole huge circle of all the testing. They don't meet the standards, so now we have to find other ways and spend more money on other ways to teach it when it's already there. And so it's this, and we as educators, when we see this, we just go, okay, well, in about another 5 years, somebody in Tallahassee is going to come up with another harebrained scared idea. We had one a few years ago, and I always tell my kids when they take the FCAT, there's some nasty little guy that sits up in Tallahassee, and he makes up these tests. He hates kids. So don't worry about it. Because the tests aren't fair. The Common Core does do a lot more of reading type of a problem solving. But how they're worded, especially on the testing, it's not fair. It's not set up to make them succeed. And the other side of this coin is and I know it's on your questionnaire, is you're getting more and more students leaving the public school system, either by voucher, by charter school, and we're failing in our public schools, and that money is going somewhere else. I think don't quote me too much on this, I think it's like $2.5 billion that are spent on voucher schools, statewide.
What's a voucher school?
If your child goes to a school that's a D or an F school,
Oh,
the
okay.
taxpayers pay for them to
Okay,
go
I
to
see.
another school, private.
Oh,
But those private schools are not held up to any accountability, the same accountability that we are.
oh, okay.
So, which is wrong. If you just stop spending the money everywhere else, I didn't go to elementary school in the United States. I grew up in Scotland, so, but I went to middle school and high school here. So I did go through a public school system, and I did over there, but it's different than here. If you just allow us to teach the way we were raised, I don't think there's any idiots in this room, really. I mean, we all did well. Why aren't we doing it? You know,
I'm just thinking.
we're testing kids in kindergarten this year.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Yes, they are being tested. It started this year. They are
That's
being tested in
ridiculous.
kindergarten. And my argument to that is we need to take all the testing out. You can do a testing, but not as much of the accountability of the testing and not as much. To test growth at the end of the year, like they always used to do when we were in school. But people talk about the dropout rate, and, you know, how are you gonna solve this in high school? Stop looking at the high school. I teach elementary. And if you don't grab a kid in elementary,
Mhm.
you've lost them for good.
Sure.
I've got fifth graders that as soon as they're old enough and can do it, they're out. They're not going to,
Ah.
I mean, why do they want to, they hate school.
Yeah, I don't
And
blame
if
you.
I used to get violently ill when I had to take a big test,
Mhm.
okay? If I had to do that every 3 weeks, and the problem is those tests are all based on one particular day. I've had kids in fifth grade just this year pass out taking the FCAT this year, cold sweats, diarrhea, vomiting. The stress we're putting on these kids is not right, especially at an elementary level. If you take those kids at an elementary level and allow them to learn for the love of learning, they get to middle school.
Surely.
They're gonna wanna, test them in middle school and high school. They're stronger, they can handle it, they're prepared, they're smarter, because they've been engaged, because they wanted to go to school. We've taken that away. And it's sad.
Pasco County is considering eliminating the valedictorian and salutatorian designations and replacing it with a magna cum laude designation. Do you support or reject this idea, or why?
To be honest with you, I really don't have a thought on it. I really don't.
Do you see a problem with salutatorians and valedictorians being singled out as being wonderful, and that is a problem?
No. I mean, I don't think that any student, you know, finishing school and have done a phenomenal job and worked hard and is more of a role model for others. I don't
Mhm.
see how that could be a negative. I mean, if that's where we're headed on that question, I wasn't really sure, but, I instituted a program at City Hall when I was mayor that any student in elementary level, or no, fifth grade, eighth grade, and senior level that maintained straight A's all year were brought to City Hall and were given awards. We need to compliment those that do well. We hear too much negative about everything else, so, I wouldn't take
Okay.
anything away from that, no.
Okay. What changes would you like to see in the Pinellas County school system? And you got 2 minutes.
Oh, wow, okay.
Good luck.
I think they need to reevaluate the Common Core. I would like them to look into a program that I've been reading about. It's called flipping, where students, teachers videotape the lesson. It's what it is, it's flipping, they're doing it in Michigan, and it's great success. The teacher videotapes the lesson, they come to school, and they get a CD of the lesson, and they take that home as homework, and the lesson is gone through, and when they come back the next day, that's the homework part with the teacher in the classroom. The reason it's working is like when I teach a subject in my classroom, we use math because that's the best one to do it with. If I teach a concept in math, these kids get this for 45 minutes, and then, or an hour, or whatever it takes, and they don't quite have it. And then they go home and they have to struggle through it at home, and half of them don't do the homework. In Michigan, how they're doing it is they can take that video home and play it 100 times. Not only are they learning, so is the parent. So it's almost like virtual school, but not. They're accountable in the classroom, but when they come back the next day, then they go back and revisit the lesson and then answer the questions or go into more depth to the lesson itself. So it's getting like a double whammy back into that lesson. So it's, I want to look into it more. We just have to find, the biggest thing is we have to find more ways to keeping our kids in school. Because if you start looking at the crime rate where we're going, it's not good. So it's an idea that I want to see investigated. The other thing I want to look at is our busing system.
What?
The busing system.
Oh, the buses. Yeah.
Float the idea of using other sourcing out the transportation. It'd be a good way to save a lot of dollars. And if we're looking at what's going on in Hillsborough County with their buses and the safety and the liabilities and the maintenance, school buses, I have it written somewhere, I forgot how much it is, but it's a huge chunk of the budget. In northern cities, kids go public transportation, they get a pass, they get to school. So, but there's a way to outsource that. And we may say, amount of people, the amount of bus drivers and that type of thing, and the issues that we're having with bus drivers with the kids, it would eliminate those issues. Just something to look at. Not sure if I'm right, but I'd be willing to
Worth
look at
looking
it.
at. Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. Last question.
Okay.
I think I know the answer. Would you be a champion for restoring the curriculum of American history from the founding to include an in-depth study of the Constitution at the secondary level?
Wow, that's a hard one. Absolutely. Not just the secondary. Our kids need to know the Constitution at elementary as well. My kids did. Up until this year. I didn't do it this year because there was no time allotted to do it. But my kids last year could quote the preamble of the Constitution. And, you know, it was, nobody cared. That was the sad part about it. But my kids knew the Constitution, mostly because the thing about me is that I'm a naturalized American citizen. And maybe it's because I'm a naturalized citizen that I appreciate our Constitution and respect the Constitution. And I think our students need to look at it the same way. And maybe after so many generations and you're born and raised here, you don't have the patriotism that you should have, and we're losing it. We don't even in elementary, we don't even say anything about Veterans Day. You know, really?
Wow.
So it's you know, we've lost that. And you walk up to any, maybe even high school kids today and ask them anything about either the Constitution or the wars that went on, things that happened, they don't know. So
That's for
it's
sure.
scary.
Yeah, it is. It's a scary situation.
Okay, those are the 10 questions.
Okay.
Now, if you'd like to take 2 more minutes
Oh, my
to
goodness.
just kind of sum up or tell us something you might have forgotten, or just kind of zero in on something, you have 2 minutes.
I think mostly, and I've said it over and over throughout this interview tonight, is that I do have a passion for my students, and that's what's driven me to run for this seat. It's because I think we're doing a disservice to our children, who are our future for tomorrow. And we're also doing a disservice to our teachers. I've lived in other countries, and I've visited many, many countries, where teachers are revered highly. Even our school system degrades our teachers. We're professionals, and we need to be treated that way. And I will advocate for teachers, and I will advocate for students, as well as the parents. So, pretty much sums it up.
Good. Thank you.
You're